Hi, I'm TeriLeigh. Welcome to my Mindfulness Master Class about food and mindful eating. Are you afraid to eat? Because I certainly was for a long time, and these are the things that I would say. Gluten, dairy, sugar, they just don't agree with me. I always feel bloated and gassy. I always have to be close to a bathroom because you never know when I'm going to have to go. I even look at a piece of cake and I gain weight. I diet and exercise, but I just can't lose the weight. I love food, but food does not love me. If you've said any of these things on a regular basis, this class is for you. I was scared to eat because every time I ate, my stomach hurt. And I tried all the diets. I did the gluten-free, the dairy-free, the sugar-free, the candida diet. I did paleo, keto, vegetarian, vegan. I even went full on raw. Then I became mindful about how I'm eating, and now I love food and my food loves me. So, what is mindful eating? Clearly, mindful eating is not about what. It's not about what you're eating. It's not about the food you're putting in your mouth. It's about how you're eating, the habits you have around your meal times, and what you're doing with your body, your mind, your thoughts, your environment, and how you treat the food. It's a disciplined practice around the whole experience and process of eating, and it really has very little to do with what food you're actually putting on your plate. And it requires small changes in mealtime habits. When you do mindful eating, when you practice this on a daily basis, you have a number of major benefits in your life. You can improve your overall health. Eventually, over time, you can achieve that ideal weight and maintain it without having to think about what to eat. I've gotten to that place in my life. You will definitely have a better relationship with food. You'll feel nourished and fulfilled almost every time you eat. You'll have increased energy because your body is processing your food as fuel appropriately. It'll even balance your sleep-wake cycle because eating on a regular schedule helps with your circadian rhythms. You'll have a better relationship with your body because you'll be listening to what your body wants and what it doesn't want. And that'll lead to a better body-mind connection. And all that leads to increased focus and mental clarity. Mindful eating has so many benefits, we can't cover them all. In this course, we will learn what diet and nutrition experts aren't telling you because they talk about what to eat. This is talking about mindful eating, and I'll teach you the difference between healthy eating and mindful eating. Then we'll go into tummy troubles and that they're more than just a stomach issue. It's not just about what you're putting in your stomach and how it's processing in there, but it's about what you're thinking, how you're feeling, your moods, your emotions, your thoughts, your conversations, how that all impacts your hormones and how your hormones impact your digestion. We'll look at that from a very scientific perspective. Then we'll talk about the root causes of common digestive problems from an emotional level. Because what emotional stress you have is related to the specific digestive issues. We'll understand that from, again, a scientific but also a symbolic level. And lastly, we'll talk about how to treat those tummy troubles by practicing mindful eating. Simple steps that you can actually take today. I want to start by telling you my story about what the diet and nutrition experts weren't telling me and what I didn't learn that I really needed to learn and how I learned things the hard way. So my food journey, it started with a very healthy background. I grew up in a very healthy eating family. My mom discovered that she had a history of heart disease, so she reduced sodium in all her cooking when I was just a little kid. Then my dad was diagnosed diabetic, and so she reduced most sugar in our cookings, in her cooking too. We had sit-down family meals for breakfast and dinner almost every day. I had a very healthy upbringing. But then in college, I got sick. I got a cat allergy, and I'll talk about that in more detail later. But the pharmaceuticals that I was prescribed, they completely wrecked my gut. And I went through this intense candida diet reset in my mid-20s. Then I lived with an anorexic. For 10 years, I lived with my first husband who was anorexic, and he activated all these food fears in me until my shaman sat me down and he tricked me into this, a mindful eating ritual. And I'll tell you the story of those details in a little bit. But first, I want you to know that I had an eating disorder and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know this was an eating disorder. I wanted food, but eating was painful. Everything I ate hurt because my stomach was just racked from the pharmaceuticals. Or I thought that the food was bad for me because of the feelings and the thoughts behind living with an anorexic. I had what's called ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. I was scared to eat. I was scared that what I would eat would hurt my stomach or what I would eat would be bad for me. So I didn't eat very much at all for a lot of times. But I did eat healthy. I ate healthy foods. I was vegetarian. I went vegetarian because that was healthier. And then I went vegan. And then I went raw. For a while, I tried the paleo and the keto. So I totally understood those diets. I did all the allergy elimination diets to determine what my body wanted and what my body didn't. I did all this fermentation and probiotics to treat my body of all the gut rot that it got from the pharmaceuticals. And I worked with a functional medicine doctor and used all kinds of nutritional supplements. I was swallowing dozens of pills a day. I ate healthy, but I was also very, very stressed about what I was eating. Everything I put in my mouth, I worried, is this right? Is my gut going to handle this? Am I going to be okay? What I didn't realize, and none of the diet nutrition experts told me, was that the more I stressed about food, the more I stressed about, is this good for me? Am I going to be able to handle this? The more my body actually rejected it. And there's science behind that. I wasn't happy, and therefore my stomach wasn't happy, and I wasn't receiving food. My stomach was saying, fine, you're angry. I'm not going to take in any nourishment. My stress about what I was eating, stress about life, stress about things going on in my world was directly impacting my body's ability to digest. I couldn't digest because I was too stressed out. The internal dialogue going on in my head was negatively affecting my body's nourishment. All that overthinking and overanalyzing was telling my stomach to not digest. And the more foods I eliminated, the more my body learned not to digest because it kind of said, oh, you're not going to give me that? Then I'm going to turn off that ability to do that because you don't need it. This is what you'll learn in this masterclass, the difference between mindful, overthinking, and mindfulness. But first, let me tell you that story about my shaman. This is Malidoma Somé, and he was my African shaman, and he tricked me into this healing ritual, and it worked. At this time, I had worked with him for several years. He called me his baby sister. We were very close, and he came to my house to visit me and stay for several days. And before we left as we left the airport, he said, we got to go to the grocery store first. I said, okay, we'll get whatever foods you want. And he filled the grocery cart with all these foods he wanted that I don't eat. At the time, I had been a raw vegan. So not only was I not eating meat, but I wasn't eating anything cooked. And I was vegan, so I wasn't eating any dairy either. And he filled up his cart with steak and things that go with steak and things that required cooking. And we got home and he even bought a Smoky Joe and he set up the Smoky Joe. He put the charcoal grill to cook. He got the steaks, he marinated them, he seasoned them, he talked about how good it is. He said the only other thing that he would prefer to do is actually kill the cow himself. But can't do that here, so we'll just pretend that happened and put that love into the food as well and thank this cow for what it gave to us. And I'm like, well, you can eat whatever you want to eat. And I'm over there in the kitchen preparing my salad, and he's rolling his eyes at me. And then he finished his steak, and we sat down, and he put the steak in front of me. And he said, eat. And then he took a bite, and he said, eat. And oh, did it smell good? And it looked good. And I wanted it. My stomach wanted it. I was so hungry because I'd been starving myself really for a really long time because I was so scared of food. And he had talked so much for so long. It took him like an hour and a half to make this steak. He talked about how great it was. I couldn't say no. So I took a bite and it was so good. And my body absorbed it and I felt so good. It's crazy because I hadn't touched meat in 10 years and I hadn't touched real solid non-vegan food in 6 years. And that day It worked. Everything changed. Something flipped in me. That day, I made the conscious choice to be mindful about my eating and in my daily life habits and choices, not just about what I was eating, but how I was preparing my food, what I was thinking about while I was preparing it, how I was treating the food, all the things that he did for me. And it flipped something in me that I eat like that now the rest of my life. And I kid you not, all my eating and digestive issues disappeared. I didn't have any problem transitioning from raw vegan to omnivore carnivore because I loved my food. So, this first part, this story, it's just to point out to you the difference between healthy eating and mindful eating. Healthy eating is about making nutritional choices in what you eat. Vegan, raw, vegetarian, pescatarian, dairy-free, gluten-free, all those things, that's all healthy eating choices. Mindful eating is about making friends with your food, treating it with respect, being intentional in how you eat. And that's a whole different ballgame, and it has a whole different effect on the different things within your system that still impact your digestion. And that's where we're going to go next. But first, I want to point out to you that many of us, like I did, have all these things and thoughts and feelings churning in your mind about eating, and you need to tell your story. You need to be heard, you need to be seen. And if you want me to do that with you, I'm happy to sit down with you and let you share your food story, all of it. And then I can talk you through what your diet and nutrition experts aren't telling you and how your healthy eating habits aren't lining up maybe with your mindful eating habits and what you can do to start some mindful eating habits to put healthy eating and mindful eating together, because that's the full picture. So if you click this little link, book here, or go to my website, terileigh.com/appointment, you can book an initial consultation to see how mindful eating would help you, and that I can sit and listen with you to your whole food story. In this second part, we're going to talk about your tummy troubles and how they're more than just a stomach issue. It's not just about what you're eating and how your body is processing that food, but it's about what you're feeling and what you're thinking too, and how your heart and gut and brain are all connected. When we were little kids and you had a tummy ache, or even if you have a child of your own now, when a child has a tummy ache, it's quite often emotional. They're bullied, or they're insecure, or they're worried or anxious about something, or they're sad about something. In short, the kid is stressed, their stomach gets upset. Digestion is directly related to emotion. We know this from being a little kid and having stomach aches. We know this from being grown-ups and dealing with little kids with stomach aches. We know this from all the idioms and phrases we use around the stomach. That upsets my stomach. I feel nauseous when I get that news. Our heart and our minds and our guts are directly connected, and it's about stress. Even as grown-ups, when we feel upset, stressed, challenged, bullied, insecure, angry, upset, hurt, lost, or anything like that, our tummies tend to get upset too. We don't like it when our tummies are upset, but there's a direct connection, and our moods and our emotions really impact how our stomachs and our intestines and our gallbladders and pancreas and all those things work. I like to think of it on a symbolic level, the symbolism of digestion. So what does digestion do for us? Digestion is how we eat food. We take in something from the outside world, we put it in our mouth starts to break it down, and then we swallow it down our esophagus, it goes into our stomach, and our stomach breaks it down some more. And it's like that outside world is being pulled apart into tinier pieces so that we can decide what of it we want to absorb into our system to become part of us, and what of it is not good for us that we push all the way through and we pee and poop out. So it's not just about food. Digestion is not just about taking in nourishment. It's not just about taking in fuel and breaking food down and making it into fuel, but it's about life. It's not just the food, it's the life experiences. So the things you experience in life, the death, the loss, the celebrations, the good news, all that is stuff that we need to digest too. So here's how that works. Digestion is a three-part process. You assimilate, you nourish, and you have an identity. So assimilation is absorbing those outside stuffs and letting them become part of you. Taking in the outside world, swallowing it, pulling it into pieces, taking some of it for ourselves, absorbing that into our system, and excreting out the rest. Nourishment is when you take in from the outside world is fulfilling, it's validating, it's affirming, it fuels us, it energizes us, not just on a physical body fuel level, but on an emotional intelligence level. And then that becomes our identity. The identity is the ability to discern what is something that we want to assimilate as nourishment and what is something we want to excrete as waste. So this whole digestive process is what is it that's becoming us and what is it we are pushing out, and our ability to determine. It's almost like our ability to create boundaries in our lives. So this explains why I had ARFID. ARFID was that avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. I wasn't just avoidant restrictive of my food. That was symbolic of me being avoidant restrictive of the things in my life that I didn't want to take in. So it all started in my early 20s when I was diagnosed with a cat allergy. Around that same time, I had a significant and the first significant death in my family. My grandfather died, who was almost a daily influence in my life. And I graduated college and had a very significant 3-year romantic breakup. I thought I was going to marry this guy and we broke up. All those things happened all at the same time, and it was way too much stress. It was major stress in my life, and I was taking that all in, and I was like, I don't want this. I didn't want to digest all those intense things. Then, because of all those things going on, I was overprescribed pharmaceutical medication. It started with the cat allergy, antihistamines. I had reactions to those antihistamines, so they gave me anti-anxieties. I had other issues. They weren't sure if it was viral or bacterial, so they gave me antibiotics, and they gave me antivirals, and they gave me anti-inflammatories. I was taking a ton of drugs. What did those do? They ripped out my gut health. All those good microbiomes going on in my gut, they weren't working anymore. Did you know that 95% of your serotonin, your happy hormone, is produced in your gut? My gut couldn't do that anymore. So then I was dealing with stomach physical stress. And then on top of that, because of all that stress going on, I lost my appetite. When I did eat, my stomach hurt. I didn't want to eat because things were horrible. The world was going on. I didn't like it. I didn't want to take any more in. I ate very little, and when I did eat, it was convenience foods because I didn't want to bother with things. And those convenience foods have MSG, which tricks your tongue, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. MSG tricks your tongue into thinking things are good. So I ate the convenience foods, the processed foods, the MSG foods, because those are the only things that made me want to eat. So I had major stress, I had belly stress, I had body stress, because MSG also causes brain fog and fatigue and all kinds of other things. And then because I was so worried about all this stuff, I may have healed the gut rot with restrictive diets. I went on all these restrictive diets, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, candida diets, and I physically felt better because my gut started to get better. But I worried my little mind into over anxious thinking and over frenzy about what I could and could not eat. I started to really freak out. Well, that's not good for me. That's not good for me either. And I can't take pharmaceutical medications, and I can't eat these things that have MSG, and I can't eat these things that have growth hormones in them, and I can't eat things that have pesticides on them. It was so much that I couldn't eat. I was freaking out. I was mindful stress. And then this is years later from the beginning, but in my 30s now, I'm living with this anorexic, neglectful husband, and I couldn't get him to eat. And so I was worried about his nutrition, and I was worried about my nutrition eating with him. And that caused more emotion because we were not in a very good, healthy relationship. And then Didn't make sense at all, but I wasn't eating very much at all. And I weighed the most that I ever did, even though I wasn't eating much because everything was bad for me. All this adds up to stress. I was completely stressed out. And so my assimilation, that absorbing of outside stuff, I didn't like those outside stuff. So I was not absorbing. I didn't want to. So I didn't take in nourishment. The nourishment I did get, I didn't feel fulfilled, validated, and affirmed in my life because there was all this crap going on. And then my identity was wrapped up in that. I couldn't discern what was good for me, what wasn't. I didn't know even who I was anymore because I was too wrapped up in all the thoughts about food. Stress completely consumed me. And that became overwhelming to my whole life. Does this sound familiar to some of you? Now, I want to make a note. I'm a thin woman, and I've always been a thin woman, but at that time when I was eating raw vegan, I was the heaviest I'd been in my life, and shortly thereafter, too. Why? Because stress hormones, which are adrenaline and cortisol, when they increase in your system, your rest and digestive hormones, the serotonin, the insulin, the glucagon, all those hormones, they decrease. These stress hormones and rest and digest hormones, they don't play nice. When stress hormones come onto the scene, the rest and digest hormones say, fine, you take over. I'm going to go do nothing. I'm not going to do my job. So the food isn't digested. It's stored as fuel for later because those digestive hormones aren't there. So I'm eating food and my stomach is saying, there's no hormones in here to do what they're supposed to do to break down this food. So we're just going to put it away until they come back out of hiding. Well, no wonder I gained weight, even though I wasn't eating much. It was stress. On another note, I said earlier I'd talk about MSG. I wasn't able to eat much. And so I was eating convenience foods because it was fast, it was easy. I didn't want to think about food. And because they were the only things that I actually felt tasted good. Why does bad food taste so good? It's because it has MSG in it. MSG is a flavor enhancer. It tricks your tongue into thinking that things taste better than they do. And not only does it do that, but it makes you want to eat more of it. And many food labels label it as different things. Many, many names for the word MSG. Monosodium glutamate also comes in the name natural flavorings. If you Google other names for MSG, you'll be surprised at the dozens of names that come up. It's kind of scary what it does. So back to that concept of stress. Yeah, let's break up with stress. I had physical stress because my body wasn't working well. What we eat and how we move is physical stress on the body. I had mental stress because I was overthinking things. And I had emotional stress because of what was going on in my marriage and in my moods and my emotions. Let me take you on sort of a little road trip of how stress works or doesn't work with digestion. So here's that little road trip. First, you get stressed. Stress triggers the adrenaline and cortisol to go up. You've got adrenaline and cortisol in your system, and they're saying, you've got to deal with this stress. So we're going to fight this tiger, deal with this stress. Well, when that happens, your stress hormones tell all of your non-essential body functions to turn off for now. We got to deal with this more important thing of this stress. So all these non-essential things like eating and digesting, like having sex and so forth, they turn off. That means your appetite goes way down. Not just your appetite for food, but also your appetite for sex because your body can't rest or digest or be vulnerable like it is in sex. So all those things, your love hormones and your digestive hormones, they go away. And we think it's short term. Your brain and your digestive organs, they stop communicating. Your brain and your stomach, they're not talking so well because you don't have that appetite and your stress hormones are busy doing all the work. That's what happens in the short term. But if you have stress over a long term, then you get malnourished, which means you have even more stress because your body isn't getting the fuel that it needs, and the whole cycle continues. And that constant stress keeps the constant level of adrenaline and cortisol in your system, which keeps your digestive organs and your sex organs and your restoring organs, hormones, all on the down low. And when those are on the down low, things don't function. And you don't have a good relationship with your digestion. You don't have a good relationship with your food, and things just don't work. And that's a summary of what happens in your body that was happening to me. So what did I do in the big, huge picture of healing all this? Now, it's not a simple solution. It's not just a simple thing to do. I had to do a lot of things. First, I had to wean myself off the pharmaceutical meds. I've been pharmaceutical free for 20 years. Then I had to go through that. I also, during the time of weaning off the meds, I had to go through that Candida diet where I did this strict elimination for 6 months, and I cut out all processed foods and all MSG. I haven't returned to processed foods and MSG. I now eat whole foods and healthy foods. But that's about what to eat, what I'm putting in my body. Well, I then increase my plant-based foods and my intake of healthier foods. So that's a whole healthy eating process that I did. That is a lot of the stuff people do when they have gut troubles. But that's only half of the picture. The other half started with my shaman doing that mindful healing ritual with me and teaching me that food is more than just about what we're eating, but it's about how we prepare it, the energy we put into it, and the process we experience when we enjoy the food. I also had to go through a process of removing or adjusting or managing all the emotional stressors from my life. That included my divorce, getting rid of that unhealthy, neglectful, anorexic relationship. Yes, my relationship was not just with an anorexic man, but it was an anorexic relationship. And I went through a mindful eating process of really paying attention to my food, paying attention to how my body responded to the food, loving my food, and that changed everything. And this is the piece that I'd like to walk you through in the mindfulness perspective. If food loves me and I love food, it totally changes your life. My assimilation now is that I love my life. I love everything I'm taking in. And if I don't, I know how to process it and excrete it out. When I eat, not just food, but what I eat in my daily experience of life, my new husband, my current husband, my relationships, my job, all those things I feel fulfilled, validated, and affirmed. I'm mindful about how I do my life. And as a result, I know myself and I trust myself. All that comes from mindful eating. So let's review. Digestion is how we take in the outside world. Not just physical food, but all of our experiences. Digestion is controlled by our hormones. What you think and feel quickly changes your hormones, affecting your digestion because of the stress level. So you've got to be mindful about how stressed you are while you're eating, because that stress level is going to impact your rest and digest hormones. Digestion is how we nourish ourselves, not just in the physical body, but in your mind with your thoughts, and in your soul with your emotions, and in your life with how you manage your stress. If you want a personal consultation with me, I can listen to your stress and talk to you about what things you're eating in your life that isn't just food, that is translating into your digestive issues, and how your stress levels are impacting your digestion, and how you could adjust your life and manage your stress and deal with and adjust your stress levels to change how your digestion is happening. In this next section, we're going to get more specific about the emotional types of stress that are causing physical digestive issues. In part 3, we're going to get real specific. What are the root emotional stress causes to your common tummy troubles? So what emotional stress is related to the specific digestive issues you're dealing with? First, let's talk about how your tummy talks. Your digestive organs are trying to tell your brain what is causing them stress. And the answer is symbolically. The symptoms of your specific digestive ailments offer clues to the stress that you need to address. So we're going to go over several basic, general common digestive issues like indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, and so forth. We're going to talk about each one and what it's telling you about the stress you have in your life. And basically, your tummy is telling you, hey, kid, deal with your stress, manage it, either get rid of it or figure out better ways to deal with it because you're causing me issues. So, indigestion. All of us at some point or another have indigestion. It's a general sense of upset stomach that usually happens after we eat. If you can't pinpoint exactly what food you ate that your body didn't want, and you just ate something and oh, you feel yuck, you could be experiencing indigestion from being moody and emotional while you're eating because your moods directly impact your food. Your emotions told your stomach not to accept the food, period. Your stomach did as it was told. So if you cannot specifically pinpoint, oh, this food made my stomach upset because I ate it, and you know it, then there's probably some sort of mood or emotion that you shouldn't have been having while you were eating. Constipation. I hate to ask, but have you been keeping everything? The stomach asks the intestine. It has sentimental value. It's garbage. You need to get rid of it. Back off. Those are my memories. That pretty much defines constipation in a nutshell. Constipation is that you can't get rid of your shit. Emotionally, physically, materially, figuratively, literally. When you have too much stuff that you're holding on to, it turns into constipation. Case in point, loved my grandmother. She was a hoarder. By the time she died, she was living in a 4-bedroom house and every room was packed to the gills, except the kitchen and the living room. Everything else you couldn't get through. What did she die of? A bowel obstruction. And not only was she holding on to her stuff, but she also held on to emotions that she wasn't supposed to share. So she held on to her anger, she held on to her resentment, she held on to all of those emotions that a good 1950s housewife should never express to her husband. She held it on until it packed into her gut so much that it killed her. Now that's an extreme example, but if you have constipation, look at what you've been holding on to in your life recently. Let's go to the opposite end. That moment when you realize it wasn't a fart, but it was actually diarrhea. You can't hold or keep your shit together. Emotionally, materially, physically, figuratively, or literally. If you kind of lose it because you have so much going on or you can't keep your stuff together, everything's all over the place, it could be diarrhea. If you're trying to control things and you can't control them, that can go into diarrhea. So you got to think about your stress levels in terms of control and what you can't control, what you can control, and how to manage that. And there's the good old irritable bowel syndrome. It's okay. I get irritable sometimes too, the brain says to the digestive intestines. Well, irritable bowel is what it says. It is an irritable bowl of suppressed or repressed anger, rage, irritation, agitation, frustration, bitterness, and resentment. So it takes that constipation concept or that diarrhea concept a step further, and it talks about the specific emotions, the irritable emotions that we are repressing and not expressing on an emotional level. Then they're going to come out from your gut on a physical digestive level. Now, this is very common nowadays. Now, back when I was dealing with, quote, gluten intolerance and I was gluten-free in the 1990s, no one had ever heard that term. But nowadays, it's pretty popular. It's pretty common. Well, let's talk about what gluten is. Gluten is a protein in whole grains that when eaten in moderation, is healthy. We need it to some level in a healthy way. It provides long-term energy and fuel for the body in a good way when you do it in moderation. But it is also more difficult to break down and digest. It takes longer. It's a longer lasting form of fuel. So it makes the digestive system work hard, a little bit harder over time, because it just takes longer to break it down, but it turns into longer lasting energy. So gluten intolerance symbolically is the concept of working too hard, overstressing and overtaxing yourself for too long. You've been adding too many hard to digest things to your life, and your body is saying, I can't do it anymore. So you have to cut out those hard to digest things. So when you cut out the gluten, you're cutting out the hard to digest food, but are you also cutting out the hard to digest stresses in your life, the hard to digest experiences? That's what you need to focus on. Going completely gluten-free for too long can make it so that your digestive system is unable to do that harder work. It also could mean that you end up just avoiding harder things in life altogether rather than building the strength to manage it. So it's a very tricky balance, that gluten-free thing. I did the gluten-free, and then I had to gradually build myself back up to being able to process those hard to digest things. And often coming with gluten-free or gluten intolerance is that gassy and bloated feeling. Remember, your digestive system is how you take in the outside world and how you assimilate it into yourself. Bloating and gas is a sign of taking in too much hot air. So your outside world is full of hot air. It's a bunch of bullshit. And you're taking it in, and you're not liking it, and you're recognizing that it's bullshit, and you just want to gas it right out. You either want to belch or fart it out before it becomes too toxic to your system. And so it's hot air. It's pointless. Are you overly exposed to too many blowhards, liars, or bullshitters in your life? Or are you becoming one of them? That could be your bloating and gassing. And the nausea and vomit. That's real fast. Remember, your digestive system is how you take in that outside world and assimilate it into yourself. Nausea is your body's immediate response to reject something. No way, not now. It comes up before it can even go down, be it food or emotional news or information. That's why when we get bad news, oftentimes we feel nauseous, and sometimes when it's really bad, we throw it up. When you feel nauseous, it's your body forcing a detox, both physically and emotionally. Get rid of this. This does not belong here. Before we can even start to digest it, it's not worth it. This is poison. There's nothing good here. So what in your life is poisonous that you need to get out? Ulcers. Ultimately, ulcers, whether in your stomach or in your intestines, it's your own digestive juices eating through the lining of your tissue. So your fiery gut stuff is so fiery that it's eating through yourself. Digestive juices are fiery, and they're meant to break things down, but they're not meant to break you down. Ulcers are a sign of too much fire in your system, burning up even the things you shouldn't burn. So you got to ask yourself, what bridges are you burning that you shouldn't, and which bridges are you burning that you need? And what are you too angry, fiery, and passionate about that it's eating you from the inside out? Lastly, I want to talk about eating disorders. So I'll go through the four main ones. Anorexia, not feeling worthy of nourishment. Fear of taking up space on this planet, feel like you're withering away. You get so thin by not eating at all that you feel like you should just evaporate. Bulimia is not liking the nourishment you take in, but wanting to live, and then not liking how life is going and wanting to get rid of it. So you take it in, oh, I didn't like that, I got to get rid of it. I'm hungry, I want life, but I don't like what I'm taking in, so I got to get rid of it right away. Binge eating is never feeling nourished by the experiences and always seeking more, and it never being enough. And lastly, the one I had, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, your fear of taking life in, not liking the world around you, and everything makes you feel sick. But you still want to live. You just want to live the good stuff. Maybe you need to make some major changes in your life. And that's when you need to deal with some major help, going for a therapist or going for a mindfulness coach. Me. Let's review. Your digestive organs are trying to tell you and your brain what is causing them the stress, and make that direct link of the types of stress in your life to what's going on in your gut and your belly. The symptoms of your specific digestive ailments offer you clues to the stress you need to address and the lifestyle changes you need to make. Mindfulness practice will help you make those changes. If I didn't mention the digestive issues that you're dealing with and you'd like a personal consultation to dig into that, or you want to talk about the specific digestive issue that I did mention, but how it relates to you and your life, and then how you can manage that stress better in your life through mindfulness, not just through mindful eating, but through mindfulness in your life in general, book a consult with me and we can talk, and I can hear your story and we can talk about how I can help you long term or even short term to manage that stress better and to calm down that tummy trouble. Now we get to the good stuff. How do we do mindful eating to treat some of this stuff on a deeper level? Remember, the healthy eating comes first. You've got to clear out your gut issues as best you can with healthy eating. But then to really treat the emotional issues, you go into the mindful eating. Here are some simple steps you can actually take today. Remember, you are how you eat, not what you eat. When you eat while you're stressed, you are stressed and anxious, and you're eating stressed and anxious, so that's what's nourishing you. When you eat while you're relaxed, you are nourished and fulfilled, and that's what is becoming your life. Whatever mood and emotion you put into your food is the mood and emotion that you're putting into yourself and into your life. So I had this conversation with my husband this morning about eating out of the container as an example. And he said, I love to eat out of the applesauce container. And I said, okay, but are you eating out of the container out of convenience and because you're lazy, or are you eating out of the container because you love the feeling the spoon makes when it scrapes along the side of the container? You love the taste of all that. And he had to think about it for a bit, because if you love the feeling and the sensation, that's mindful eating. If you're doing it because of laziness, you're eating laziness. And do you want to nourish yourself with that lazy energy? I don't think so. So that's how we become mindful in our eating. So the first step is to do a little mindful eating self-assessment quiz. So I'll take you through several questions. And as you answer these questions, you're going to start thinking about, oh, I don't do that. Maybe I can do that better. Or I don't do that as much as I want to. I could do that better. Here we go. So you're going to rate these things on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being I never ever do that, and 10 being always. How often do you sit down with your food? Remember when you were a little kid and your mom said, sit down with your food so you wouldn't choke? It was more than that. It was about treating the food with respect. So I'm not just talking about at meals, but I'm talking about every time you put food in your mouth. Is it never? Is it always? Do you sit down and respect your food with a seat at the table? Number 2, how often do you prepare your own food? And I'm not just talking about cooking. I'm talking about if someone else does the cooking, do you take time to prepare your bites, to put mindfulness energy of yourself and what you want from the food into your food? Do you just dig in? I'm just going to start eating and not think about it? Or do you take the care to select and arrange each bite and to appreciate and love each bite and give the food the energy that you want to be nourished with? How often do you plate your food? Like I said, my husband was eating applesauce out of the container because he loves the feeling. Even takeout or wrap snack food. Do you put it on a plate or a bowl before you eat it? Or do you just eat it out of the plastic container that it came in? Do you give it the respect of taking time with it? You know, sometimes I even take out the fine china and put food on it just because. Not because it's a special occasion, but because I want specialness in my food that day and I need to feel special. And yes, special occasion food tastes better because it is eaten on the fine china. So write down these answers. You don't have to write down the question, just the number. We'll add up the numbers at the end. Next 3 questions. How often do you set your table? And I'm not just talking about putting a plate and knife and fork down with maybe a napkin. I'm talking about clearing the table of any non-food related clutter and creating an atmosphere of now is the time to eat. That would be a 10. A 1 would be you don't even have a table. Next question. How often do you offer gratitude for your food or meals before eating it? And again, I'm not just talking about a rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub saying grace. I'm talking about actually taking the time to look at your food, to talk to it, to appreciate it, to give it the love that you want to be imbibing. And next question, how much do you intentionally pay attention to your food while you're eating it? This is like savoring the flavors, enjoying the textures, appreciating the colors, chewing and swallowing and enjoying every piece of it before you take another bite. Are you the type of person to shove more food in before you're done swallowing the last bite? Rate yourself on that scale of 1 to 10. Next question. How often do you eat breakfast? Think about this as the meal you eat before you start your day. How often are you nourishing yourself first before going out and serving and nourishing others in your world? That's a big one. Next one, how often do you eat a meal without doing anything else? No TV, no cell phone, no reading, no working, no talking about other things, unless you're talking about the food and how good it is. How often do you have a meal just for the sake of having the meal and doing just that, giving that undivided attention to the meal? If you give undivided attention to the meal, you're giving undivided attention to yourself. How much do you intentionally avoid negative thoughts or talk while you're eating? If you find yourself thinking, talking about bad things while eating, you're eating bad things. Select closer to never. If you find yourself thinking, talking about good things while you're eating, select closer to always. How much do you feel nourished by your food? So this is thinking about how you feel when you're done eating. Think about how good you feel in your body and your mood. And where is that on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you allow a bit of time for your stomach to settle after you eat before you go back to your day? Consider this the eat and run type question. Are you eating on the go? Are you sitting down, eating, giving yourself a little bit of time to process, and then transitioning into life? This last question is not a never always, but a horrible awesome. And it's the last question. Rate your relationship with food. If food was a long-term relationship with you, would you be in love, 10, or in toxicity, 1? Now go back and add up all your numbers. It'll be a number between 12 and 120. Here's your score. If you rated yourself at a 97 to 120, you are a pretty goddamn good mindful eater and you treat food with love, and it is the love that you are receiving. If you're between 73 and 96, friendly with food. You got it pretty good. Yeah, we're friends. We get along. 49 to 72, food is a frenemy. You like it sometimes, not so much other times. It's good and it's not so good. 25 to 48, food is your foe. It's challenging to you. And if it's 12 to 24, it is number one enemy and it is a big problem. So how do you address that? Again, looking back at my transition, there's the half of how to get healthy in your eating so that you're actually getting what your body needs. But then there's the mindful eating. Mindful eating is not about what you're eating. It's not about the nutrients or the diet. It's about how you're eating. It's a disciplined practice around the whole experience and process of taking in food. And thinking of that as taking in nourishment of your life. You can make small changes in your mealtime habits and they will make big changes over your life. If you make many, many small changes in your mealtime habits and become food is love type mindfulness, you have these benefits. Improve your overall health. You'll be able to achieve your ideal weight and maintain it because you're paying attention to your body. You're giving it the food it needs. You'll have a better relationship with food. You'll feel more nourished and fulfilled. You'll increase your energy. You'll even balance your sleep-wake balance, your circadian rhythms, because your food is connected to that as well. Your eating times. You'll have a better relationship with your body, better relationship with your mind and your body-mind connection. And you'll even feel more increased focus and clarity. Let's break it down to be simple. There are a lot of things I learned about being mindful from my dog, Suka. Now, Suka was a dog who was very, very particular about her eating. She liked to have a seat at the table. So see here, she's eating at a table with me. She would jump up on the seat. I'd put her food down in her dish and she'd wait for me to sit down to eat with her. She wanted to take a seat at the table. She was always happy to eat. Isn't every dog always happy to eat? And what Suka did was she savored her food. She would look at it, she would smell it, she'd take it in her mouth and taste it, and then she'd spit it out and look at it again, and then she would eat it and really lick her lips when she was done. Now, most dogs aren't that slow when they eat, but they do savor their food, and they want more when they know it's good for them. And she thought food was better when it was with others. She never wanted me to eat alone, and she didn't like to eat alone. Most dogs don't let you eat alone. They like to be there with you. They're telling you food is better when you're in community and having a good time. And eat on time. Have a set rhythm and structure to your eating, a system, a process to eat when you're supposed to eat, telling your belly, this is eat time. We got to take a break from our lives and eat. She told me when it was food time. So here are some mindful eating habits I can tell you to practice right now. First and foremost, the easiest thing you can do is attach breathing to your eating. It will change everything. Take deep breaths between every bite. Be gracious. Talk to your food. Love your food. Tell it how good it is, because that's what you're going to eat. Be very mindful of your attitude and your mindset. Don't eat when you're angry. Don't eat when you're sad. Take some time to change your mood before you eat. Get enough water. And water really is part of your food intake. And yes, that's part of healthy eating, but there's a whole spiritual level that I talk about in personal coaching and group coaching about mindfulness with eating. Chew and swallow, and then take a bite. Chew and swallow, and take your next bite. Set your table, create an atmosphere, sit down to your table, use your utensils. Time your meals the same time every day. Pay attention to the food, the flavors, the textures, the colors. Make your plate look good. Prepare your food with love and intention and make it look pretty on the plate that you want to have a relationship with it. If you choose even just one of those things I just listed and do it once a day, it will change your day. If you just do it for one day, it will make that day better. If you do it every day for a whole week, it will change your mind. You'll start to think, this is different. If you do it for a whole month, it will change your body. You will start to notice feeling better in your body. And if you do it every single time you eat for the rest of your life, it will change your life on the long term for the better forever. So what can you do today? Pick one of those habits. I gave you a whole list of a whole bunch of them. Just pick one. I suggest breathing. Commit to that habit for today, and then again all week, and next week, and the week after. And do that habit every time you eat. Every single time you put food to your mouth, you practice that habit. See how that feels and what's changed in your life after a day, after a week, and after a month. Food and breath will impact everything. So I suggest you breathe deeply when you eat, because you get 90% of your energy from breath, not food. And oxygen will help balance those hormones so that your hormones can say, adrenaline and cortisol, it's food time now. So we've got to put you away and let your digestive hormones come out. And breathing will help you slow down and enjoy your food. And when you slow down your food eating, you will slow down the hustle and bustle and busy of your life. Love your food and it will love you. Let's review. Mindful eating is not about what to eat, but how you eat. And food impacts your whole system, so being mindful about it will radically produce results. Mindful eating is small changes to everyday eating habits that when you do them over time, they make a big impact with amazing results. So you have to practice these habits daily over time to experience the results. Yes, you'll feel a little bit better, tiny, tiny little subtle bit better if you have it with one meal. But if you do it all the time with every meal, it makes a bigger difference. So what to do today? Breathe deeply when you eat. These practices I've given you, they're pretty simple. They're pretty basic, but actually incorporating them into your life, that's not an easy task because it takes consistency, it takes discipline, it takes real purpose and drive and motivation to do that. If you need me to hold you accountable, if you want me to help you develop a step-by-step plan of which mindfulness practices to incorporate piece by piece so that you do build to a full-on mindful eating practice in life, then book a one-on-one consultation with me and we'll talk about how eating works with you and what mindfulness practices are easiest to incorporate into your life first to build up to the ones that you want to incorporate in a bigger way. Just book this consultation. It's 45 minutes. We'll talk about your life and we'll get you started. Then we could also move you into a group program that I offer occasionally, or we can work one-on-one over long-term, several sessions to really get you going on your mindfulness path. In the next section, I'll review the whole program, the whole class we did today. We've come to the end of this Mindfulness Master Class. So in one slide, I'm going to summarize the major bullet points of the class, and then I'll talk to you about how you can work with me in the future. Summary. Healthy eating is about nutritional choices in what you eat, but mindful eating is about making friends with food, treating it with respect, and being intentional in how you eat, because how you treat your food is how you treat yourself. Digestion is how we take in the outside world, not just food, but all of our experiences in life and how we nourish ourselves in our body, minds, and souls from that external experience of life, how we assimilate that and make it part of who we are. So the symptoms of our specific digestive ailments offer clues to the stress and the problems that we need to address in our lifestyle and changes we should make to have a better experience in life. Food impacts your whole system, so being mindful about it produces radical effects on your whole life. And mindfulness can be simple, tiny, little, small changes to your everyday eating habits, but they have massive radical effects on your life as a whole. And over time, you can really have some major experiences. So thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you. I appreciate you for following my work, and I appreciate you for taking the time to think about how you could be more mindful in your eating. Eating is nourishment. How are you nourishing yourself? If you want to work with me, go to my website, TeriLeigh.com/appointment, and book an appointment to see how working with me one-on-one or in small groups can help you with your mindful eating. Until next time, namaste.